Hi everyone, I'm Stan Mallow. Welcome to Paranormal Yakker. My guest in today's show is Dr. Lynne Kitei. I'll be talking with her about the 20th anniversary edition of her best-selling blockbuster book, The Phoenix Lights, A Skeptic's Discovery That We Are Not Alone. The book is an explosive inside story of the largest UFO sighting in modern history. Dr. Lynne, welcome to Paranormal Yakker.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for letting me share the inside story of the Phoenix Lights. There is so much mis and disinformation out there. It wasn't just one or two events, it was many events over a dozen hours and also over at least 4 states. So we have a lot to talk about.
You, Dr. Lynne, are an internationally acclaimed physician and health educator. You were well established in the field, your future assured, and yet you pushed aside a successful medical career to pursue the investigation of the Phoenix Light. What was the reason for you doing that?
After a closed sighting in 95, 2 years before the March 13th, 1997 historic mass anomalous sighting, UAPs, that really have become the most witnessed, most documented, most important mass anomalous sightings in modern history. But I had no idea, no background, no interest in the topic at all. And both my husband and I are physicians, and being a physician, you must be a healthy skeptic, but open to whatever comes through the door. And we actually had a very close sighting to our home in February of 95. We live mountainside in Paradise Valley, Arizona, which is surrounded by mountains. It's called the Valley of the Sun, but surrounded by mountains. And we're pretty high on one of the mountains and overlook the city skyline as well as the airport. So we're very used to what planes and helicopters and streetlights and car lights look like. One window of our bedroom, one wall of our bedroom is a window. So whatever pops up out there, if we're in the bedroom, we get to see whether it's a haboob, they call them, these dust storms that come in, or fire out there, or the other lights. This was quite different. My husband happened to be standing at the window. It was the eve of my birthday. I don't believe in coincidence anymore, but it happened to be the eve of my birthday. And I was in an adjacent room in a bath, and he was on several state and hospital medical boards. Nothing ever ruffled his feathers. And suddenly he sounded alarmed, and he says, "Get over here quick. What the hell is that?" And I grabbed my towel, wringing wet, run up to the window, dripping, and a little below us. And you have to understand, we are actually in a gated area nestled in a mountain range. No way this was military. But a little below us, very close to our home, just yards from our home, were three amber orbs in a pyramid formation. And I always go back to this sighting because I saw this up close and personal. Nothing like I'd ever seen before. And of course, my first thought was, because my life's work actually is medical communications as well as practice. And I produce video and workbook curriculums since 85 on vital health issues for schools worldwide. Discovery Education distributes them. So my first thought was to grab my video camera, but was downstairs. So I tried to take everything in. And anyone out there that's had a paranormal experience that's even close to this knows what I'm talking about. You don't know how long it's going to last. So I tried to take everything in, the size, the shape, the color. They were about 3 to 6 feet each, depending on how close they were. They were orbs. I call them an orb because the light did not extend outside the edge. It was self-contained. And it was oval shape. Each one was oval shape, uniform, oval shape, one on top and two closely aligned underneath, which is interesting because the Navy Nimitz pilots talk about the Tic Tac UFO that they captured on video and that it's oval shape. I don't know if it's connected, but they were oval shape. And I thought to myself, if I don't get a picture of this, because the amber color within each orb was very uniform, very soothing. It didn't glare at all. Every other light out there glared. And I thought, if I don't get a picture, no one's going to believe this. And I keep a camera in my closet ready for our beautiful sunsets here. I collect sunsets and I go running for the camera. My husband calls me back. He said, "Get over here quick. One of them is disappearing." And again, it's just like yesterday. I noted every nuance. The top orb, without budging from the two closely aligned underneath, there were three separate orbs, started to shrink very slowly, mechanically, as if there was an intelligence behind it, until it was pea size. Now remember, just looking at that pea size, it was so strange. And even after that disappeared, it felt like it was still there. Where did it go? I jumped out on the balcony. I got a quick picture of the two lower orbs. They cannot be explained or denied or felt fudged, for that matter, by military and university optical experts. To this day are true unknowns. But I caught the two lower orbs on 35 millimeter and immediately noticed an eerie silence, as if time had stopped. It was just bizarre. And I didn't share this with a soul until 2 years later when I met with the investigators for the mass sighting.
How, Dr. Lynn, did family members, friends, and fellow professionals in the medical field react to the decision you made, one that changed the course of the road you were traveling in life? Were they supportive of your interest in exploring the UFO phenomena, specifically the Phoenix Lights, or did they try to talk you out of it?
I will get to that. That is a great question, but up to now, I didn't share it with a soul. I mean, I didn't share any of this with anyone. And on March 13th, while thousands of people were outside looking purposely at the sky for a glimpse of the Hale-Bopp comet, they also caught a glimpse of, for anybody that doesn't know about this, and again, there's much mis and disinformation out there, 1 to 8 miles wide, according to Peter Davenport of the National UFO Reporting Center. Either these orbs that seem to be attached to something or actual craft. And again, if you go on the Phoenix Lights Network website, go to the GAP page, Geospatial Animation Project, GAP, and you'll see a 12-year study. 2 or more people had to see the same craft to be in this study. And if you look at the beautiful illustrations by Larry Lowe, who just passed recently, they're very different. I mean, there's V shape and boomerang shape and triangle shape with different numbers of lights. Now, whether it was one craft that could morph and look different, or the perspective from where the person was standing, or a parade. And that's what was ultimately, after 12 years of meticulous study, and it's really been confirmed since then, not only wasn't it just 1 or 2 events, there were many events over at least 4 states. There's much more to the story, but to answer your original question, when I finally did come forward in 2004, again, I was working at the Arizona Heart Institute. No one knew that behind closed doors, I was editing down that book to the best, most compelling data that I could find. And when I finally came forward, I was aghast. I could not believe it. Well, I was nervous. I have to tell you, very precarious. But I had doctors and nurses pull me aside to tell me their stories and how thankful and grateful they were that I came forward with the data. Because, I mean, it's enough. It's time we get this topic out in the open. People ask me what they were. I don't know what they were, but I know that they were. And it's time to get this topic out in the open, address it, accept it, and study it, so we can move forward and not only find out who's driving these things, but also move forward in our own evolution. And when I did finally come forward, I have to tell you, I know who reads the book and who doesn't, because anybody that reads the book not only knows the trials and tribulations I had trying to really find a logical explanation, and as the story unfolded, how it happened, but when they appreciate what it took to get there, I really have to tell you, I have been very fortunate in that, and I know that there's debunkers out there that want to discredit people that come forward, but the data speaks for itself. I'm not trying to convince anyone of anything. Just look at it. If I can be a credible voice so they actually look at the data, then I've done my job. So after I did come forward with the book and really had a wonderful reception for people.
Can you recall, Dr. Lynn, that defining moment, if indeed there was one, when you had an epiphany and saw the light, so to speak, that took you from UFO skeptic to UFO believer?
That is a good question, and it's a profound question, because having had that up close and personal experience, and again, there is so much more to this story. When I went back to those slides, those strips of 35 millimeter, and this wasn't until 3 years after the mass sighting, I had contacted Navy optical physicist Dr. Bruce Maccabee, who also unfortunately just passed. And we had had another sighting that I had alerted the group about. By then, I was connected with Village Labs, and I still was anonymous. I mean, the other videographers had no idea who this was coming from. I really did stay anonymous for 7 years, except for a handful of other optical experts and so forth. I had alerted Village Labs that through a fog, I had seen these lights return after March 13th. And it was miraculous. I have to tell you, the third night. And we had, coincidentally, the videographers were situated, lived north, south, east, and west. So we caught the same formation of lights mirroring. I mean, it was unbelievable. Straight lines, mirror images. The final thing was a giant pyramid of three lights in the same location once again, and I'll get to that in a second. And I had been told by Linda Moulton Howe, who is very famous in the UFO world, because I had her look at my data, that I should contact Dr. Bruce Maccabee. And I was very hesitant, I have to tell you, but 3 years later, at this point, I did. And I stuck the first and the last picture from the close sighting in 95, just as an afterthought. And he calls me up a couple weeks later. He says, Dr. Lynne, you said that close sighting in 95 was only a couple minutes. I said, right. He said, ask your husband to confirm. I said, he won't talk about it. It's interesting how people come from a different background, different upbringing, different belief system. Some people can't deal with this topic. Some people don't want to, and that's okay. Everyone in their own time. If you feed into the flare theory, it gives you comfort, so be it. But now there's data if you want to really learn what happened. But the other thing is the same exact phenomena at a distance that I would capture 2 months before the mass sighting and during the mass sighting were there, disappearing in the same spot 2 years before the mass sighting. Plus, he said what's really poignant is that the skyline changed significantly from the first to the last picture. And he had me do an experiment, go out on the balcony, shoot the skyline. And this was 3 years later, but shoot the skyline one night every hour, the next night every half hour. I actually did it another night every 15 minutes to see when the lights change. Now, I usually take a bath between 7 and 8 when we're home. So let's be conservative and say starting point is 8 o'clock. The lights started going out. We're talking groups of lights, not just individual lights, groups of lights. And you can see it because he put the pictures one on top of the other, and you can see with the lines, the groups of lights. In the first picture, start going out about 9 o'clock. The last picture is indicative of 10:30, 11 o'clock. And he actually did it again for National Geographic show with better software years later. And there were more lights that were on in the first picture that were off in the last picture. And he says to me, can I present this case at the upcoming MUFON International Symposium in Washington, D.C., 1999? I said, look, Dr. Maccabee, this is your baby. I would have never, ever realized this data. Just keep me anonymous. That's all I asked, which he was kind enough to do, as were the other people. He presented the case in 1999, and I did not share this even in the first book until 2010, because I still can't get my head around it, as the first, and as far as we know, the only authenticated photographic evidence of missing time. The reason that I shared it eventually in the 2010 was because, going back to your original question, the response to my book and for my coming forward was so, I was grateful that the response was so positive that I thought, okay, it's the data. And let's go with the data, and hopefully scientists will look at it. Not only does it show that our concept of time, linear time, past, present, and future, is primitive. That's probably not what time really is. But if there are other times and spaces along with ours, then why is it such a leap to think that there couldn't be other intelligent, sentient entities in these other times and spaces that we get glimpses of if we're open to them or invited? So that's why I shared it in the second edition of the book, which is now in its fourth edition as the story continues to unfold. But again, there is so much more to this story.
On the evening of March 13th, 1997, almost 50 years after the Roswell UFO incident, a parade of low-flying, mile-wide V-shaped orbs and craft was seen in the skies over Phoenix and across Arizona, and you described earlier what you yourself witnessed. How, Dr. Lynne, did others who witnessed this extraordinary event describe what they saw?
Going back to what I said earlier, I mean, people saw these 1 to 8 mile wide, either these orbs, these formations, equidistant formations of orbs that seemed to be attached to something, but they couldn't quite see what they were attached to. But as it went right overhead, rooftop level, in between the orbs, it blocked out the stars, or it looked wavy like water. And some people saw actual craft with gunmetal bottoms, with windows. Other people saw these orbs detach from the main object, go out in the environment, redock with it later. Other people saw these craft split in two and shoot straight up, or shoot off without even dispersing the air, totally silent. I mean, it was just eerie and amazing. And talking about how people reacted in real time, people were in awe and in wonder. Many people pulled over their cars to watch. No one was scared. Now, there were some people that had, you want to call it oncological shock, whatever. It just didn't fit into their reality cube, so they couldn't deal with it. But the majority, vast majority of people, there has not been one, this is important, not one report of harm, threat, abduction, or missing persons, as some movie did, associated with the Phoenix Lights. It was quite the opposite. Again, people were just mesmerized, and just, I still have people contacting me to tell me that they felt blessed to have the experience. We're talking, that doesn't happen with conventional aircraft or flares, and by the way, 3 years later, I mean, we're talking when they shot off the flares. I mean, people that saw the real deal knew, especially at that moment, as myself, that, well, because again, I was looking for any logical explanation, which I have yet to find. And they tried to reenact it, and it was such a farce. It was such a joke that to date, it has never been recreated or explained. And they've never addressed the craft that people saw as well. And our own former Governor Symington saw and divulged and disclosed that he saw himself and that it felt otherworldly. So, there is much more to the story. Plus, 6 months before the mass sighting, talk about coincidence, I was invited to present my substance abuse prevention education program at the Gila Bend Native American Reservation. They had one school, and they don't talk to outsiders. But I noticed, in science, we look for repeatability, that these phenomena kept showing up right where South Mountain and the Estrellas intersect. And I do have a picture on the photo page so people can see the topography, and their sacred ground is in between. And I called up the principal and I said, "Did anybody see strange lights on March 13th?" And he started to giggle. And I said, "Is that funny?" And he said, "Are you kidding? We've been looking up at them for centuries. We call them sky people, light beings." I had no idea. That was the first I heard of that. And he tells me that that's how the Estrellas got its name. It means star in Spanish, gateway to the stars. And there's petroglyphs of very similar phenomena etched out, centuries old petroglyphs, pictures of these things from centuries ago. Plus, they believe that there's a portal or gateway in that area. And again, if you look at my pictures, the data speaks for itself. These phenomena from our view keep popping up right where South Mountain and the Estrellas intersect, where the Native American lands are. And they were looking up at them. He said that they were looking up at them on March 13th, 1997. And on the Navajo range, I mean, it's fascinating. I had no idea. I mean, not only do native cultures believe, indigenous cultures believe that these orbs are ancestors or spirit world coming to give them knowledge and comfort and inspiration. And saying I've certainly been inspired to do this, but also the day before our mass sighting, there was a big sighting up at the Navajo Range. and they're very open to it. They welcome them. I hope we even have protocols to invite these phenomena in. And these orbs were going around in giant circles clockwise, and then they would change the counterclockwise over an hour. And the whole Navajo population in that area brought out their lawn chairs to watch it for an hour. I mean,
The military, various government agencies, and even members of the media have been known to cover up UFO sightings, discredit people who are courageous enough to come forward and say they had those encounters. The Phoenix Lights sightings was no different. Can you, Dr. Lynn, tell me about some of those cover-ups?
right from the get-go, there was no investigation, no explanation. It was uncanny. We're talking as just a public safety issue right over people's heads, that there was nothing from the military or the government. And even after Councilwoman Vice Mayor Frances Farwood asked for an investigation innocently, she didn't see it. She was just doing her job because over 1,000 people had contacted her asking why isn't there an investigation, and she was just ignored.
While many influential people downplayed the UFO phenomena, others didn't. Extensive images, analysis combined with the testimony of a variety of well-known figures, including past presidents, scientists, and astronauts, such as Dr. Edgar Mitchell, make a compelling case that these aerial anomalies are real. And also, I wanted to mention that you, Dr. Lynn, include in the Phoenix Lights details on all I just mentioned. That information brings credence to the belief that alien civilizations have been visiting our planet for thousands of years. Can you share one or two of the testimonials from well-known figures that your research and investigation of UFOs uncovered?
I had no idea that these phenomena not only have been occurring since human documentation began, we certainly have such poignant history of these phenomena. Even in ancient caves, we have long extinct animals in these drawings in caves with UFOs in the sky. I mean, how did they even think of that? And then we move forward and we have Sumerian writings and India writings, and even in the Bible, Ezekiel's wheel. And then we fast forward. We're talking 100 years before our mass sighting. There was a big mass sighting in Kansas and Washington and even in Canada of what they described as these giant airships with removable lights. Sound familiar? And this was 6 years before the Wright brothers took flight. And then you fast forward again and you have the Foo Fighters during World War II, which I was told by a doctor, I've gone to such lengths to have my data explained. And Dr. Richard Haynes, who actually was one of the top scientists for NARCAC, for reports from aeronautics and from pilots, said that my orbs were very similar to what they were seeing in World War II. They called them the Foo Fighters. And we have a 93-year-old, young French pilot who during World War II actually came up against these Foo Fighters. Each side thought that the other side had this advanced technology and spy technology. And it wasn't until after the war that everybody found out that no one had the spy technology. And then you fast forward again and we have Belgium and UK. And actually, Belgium is an example, a model for what should happen. They got together their civilians and government and university and scientists to try to really study these phenomena. And then you fast forward again, and we have, of course, the Phoenix Lights that happened. And not only do we have people such as our governor coming forward, and he's one of the credible people that as an elected official, he's one of the only ones that came forward to say not only did he see the craft, but that it was otherworldly in his estimation, as other countries would say. But in my book, I have numbers and numbers. I mean, I really tried to find credible people, presidents and astronauts.
The 20th anniversary revised and expanded version of the best-selling 2004-2000 editions of the Phoenix Lights shares the latest UFO developments and sightings. Included is new evidence real for the first time, which takes a giant step forward in supporting the reality that we are not alone. What is that evidence?
What's interesting is that, and actually heartening, that there are whistleblowers now coming forward that from the military and the government that are divulging information. And again, I'm a show me person. I haven't seen these things personally, but they at least are getting the information out there and waking people up to the fact that these phenomena have been studied for decades and decades by the government and the military. The fact that there are now pictures that are being divulged of the Navy Nimitz pilot Tic Tac UFOs, as well as other poignant pictures. And also, when it comes from people that we respect as military and government people that are sharing this information at a very slow pace, unfortunately, but it's the UFO congressional hearings are helping to get the word out there. And hopefully soon we really will get more and more information, because I always say the more credible people that come forward, whoever they are, the more credibility it lends to not only the Phoenix Lights mass sighting, but also to the UFO UAP topic as a whole. I feel very honored to be able to share what I've shared today.
When it comes to the next step for humankind in communicating with our intergalactic brothers and sisters, what, Dr. Lynne, would you like to see happen? And do you have any suggestions or thoughts on how that communication can be achieved?
In my book, I give 10 ways to connect with these other intelligences, whatever they are. And from meditating, and I have to say, from my near-death experience, I will share now that I actually met at 8 years old 3 giant beings in glowing white robes above the earth that were looking down on earth. And I have felt there's much more to that story as well that I do share in the book. But I came back thinking everybody knew the secret and everybody was psychic, everybody was empathic, and also feeling that these 3 beings were guides. I've had people ask me, were the 3 lights outside my bedroom window the eve of my birthday in 95 have a connection to these 3 beings that I met when I was 8 years old? And this is back in 1956. All I do know is that I have felt that they've been with me. And when I meditate, I don't hear voices, but I get very strong messages when I do ask for guidance. And I have come to trust the guidance. And it's always taken me to a good place. You'll read in the book that I didn't know why I had this because I didn't want to touch this topic with a 10 feet tall. And yet my friends would say, Lynn, this is what you do. You've been doing it with vital health issues for 20, 30 years at the time. You could do something really credible and professional with this vital issue. And I have to admit, once I surrendered, the puzzle pieces have just continued to just fit together. And I feel very blessed that I've been able to go on this journey and to share with you and your audience today. And as far as other people, yes, there is a way that all of us can open up our hearts and our minds and actually communicate with these other intelligences. And again, I have 10 ways to do that in the book if people care to learn how to do that. But we all have the capability, if we choose, to open up to, again, the wondrous possibilities in the universe. There's so much more out there for us to learn and embrace. I hope that some of your audience will do that, because it is, once you do open up, you start noticing serendipities and connections to things. It's amazing. And of course, there's others out there that will just deny it, close off to that, and that's their choice. They won't have those experiences unless they choose to open up.
Should viewers of Paranormal Yacker want to purchase the 20th anniversary revised and expanded edition version of the Phoenix Lights, learn what events you'll be at, and also check out the Phoenix Lights Network website, how can they do it?
Okay, thephoenixlights.net is the Phoenix Lights Network website, but if you just Google it, it usually comes up first or second up there. There's so much going on in the Phoenix Lights world. But yes, Phoenix Lights Network website is packed with information. And we put updates on the homepage and the events page whenever anything new is popping up. And there's wonderful clips for people to watch and reports. And of course, the photo page has my unique collection of university and military optical expert analyzed and authenticated 35 millimeter photos, as well as the gap page. They can look at the 10 different craft, and also there's animations there. There's an animation of exactly what our former Governor Simington saw. It's wonderful. And the news page, of course, and there's much more in there. The missing time data from Navy optical physicist Dr. Bruce Maccabee, a 21-page report is there as well, and much, much more. So the website itself has links to the book, The Phoenix Lights, A Skeptic's Discovery That We Are Not Alone, as well as a documentary. The documentary, if people want the DVD, which has the bonus features, unbelievable bonus features, including coincidences, which I didn't even mention today, that happened on March 13th, including a satellite that's supposed to detect incoming missiles, which went dead that night, March 13th, as well as an article in Scientific America, an August 97 article that talked about strange gamma rays that came into our atmosphere.
Dr. Lynne Kitei, I thank you for being my guest on Paranormal Yakker. I very much enjoyed yakking with you, and I wish you continued success in your search for proving that we Earthlings are not alone.
We are not alone, and keep looking up. And now it's double entendre. You know that, and your audience knows that now. Keep looking up.
Hi everyone, this is Stan Mallow, the Paranormal Yakker. I hope you enjoyed the interview you just watched. So that you don't miss any upcoming shows, be sure to subscribe to my free YouTube channel. To do that, just press the subscribe button on your screen.